This recording, or parts thereof, may not be reproduced without permission of Dialogue House Associates. All rights reserved. The following presentation is a lecture delivered by Dr. Ira Progoff at the School of Business Administration of the University of Puerto Rico in February 1974.
Thank you. Each time I come to Puerto Rico, I say, next time I come, I will know Spanish. And finally, I will have to learn Spanish just to find out the things he says about me. When I arrived this afternoon, Professor O'Neill was telling me about what my subject is. The title that we had made in English, which was New Next Steps in Social Responsibility, or Business Responsibility, either way. And Professor O'Neill said, well, that actually in English that way, it didn't say much. So he had to translate it and fix it. And I won't try to read the Spanish, but I asked him to write it down. And then from that Spanish, it was translated into English, which became new steps which business enterprise must be aware of in order to assume social responsibility. Now, in that form, the title makes some sense and may have some relevance. And then it occurred to me that we may have discovered something very great in this, because there are many things in the United States which in English don't make sense. Now, maybe if we translate them into Spanish and then put them back, what we can do. What does come, though, very clearly to the fore in the retranslation, what is the saying that to translate is to betray? We may turn that all around. What comes through in the translation is that what is important is the question of what must business enterprise become aware of if it is to fulfill its social responsibility, its responsibility to the community in general. And I have some thoughts of that. What are the basic things? In that context, I would like to tell you some of the specific ways that I see that being approached. And then we can, in our question and discussion time, go at the issues from different points of view. One thing that business enterprise must become aware of is that whatever its role is to be in society, it is not to be a role that is played from the outside in. That is to say, business enterprise cannot be in the position of a good parent who gives things. Also, the changes that would be made in society will not come in the nature of economic or political things that are placed from the outside, even essentially probably not by laws fundamentally. One of the things that we have seen in certainly the last century, is that political changes and economic developments have not brought mankind peace or tranquility. If governmental edicts were the way to improve the lot of mankind, that would have been done already. Or even if the basic economic facts of higher production, if that was able to help the lot of mankind, that also would have been done, because economic and political changes have been available to us. But there is something else, and that has to do not with the externals and not with the power structure, but it has to do with something in the nature of a human being, whether that human being is within business enterprise or whether he is in some other part of the culture. One of the additional things a business enterprise must become aware of is that businessmen are human beings, or at least hopefully are human beings. One of the titles that I thought of before was The Businessman as Human Being, and some people thought that was improbable. For the purpose of our consideration, we really must understand that for changes to take place in society that will be constructive changes, it must be approached not in terms of the divisions and separations among groups of people in society, but it must be approached in terms of the underlying unity of people. If we speak of particular classes of people as human beings, what we really are implying is that the fact of being a member of a particular class is really a secondary distinction, and that what is underlying and fundamental is the basic fact of being a member of the human species, and therefore of having certain human qualities and especially certain human possibilities that are inherent in being a human being. With those possibilities present, then we may progress. One additional fact that business must be aware of, and that has to do with the old conception, is still, as far as I know, basic for economics and business, namely the conception of economic man, that there is a particular quality of human being, of economic man, who functions in terms of a rational calculation of pleasure and pain, and who can, if you appeal to his various emotions or drives for pleasure, if you appeal to them, then you can influence him, you can control him and manipulate him, and that therefore there is an economic man, a type of human being who functions in the marketplace. And one of the great characteristics of business thinking is that view of mankind in the image of economic man. And it's very important to make the distinction and to realize that while it is true that maybe statistically, that is to say, in the large mass of the society, consumers and other people will act as economic men, following supply and demand and other such things, that being an economic man is not the characteristic of the human species, that the psychology of an economic man is not the keynote and is not the main thing to be understood in understanding the psychology of man in society. Now, there is a large question of what else is part of human nature that has perhaps a larger effect than the merely economic calculation. In a general way, we could see that there are all the identifications of group and all the basic drives in people, first to fulfill and unfold their nature as individuals, to become persons, and to become persons in particular ways, that is, in particular social ways and with respect to particular achievements that they can develop. The key thing is the question of becoming a person, and what is involved in seeing in a human being this characteristic of being a person. I would like, for purposes of our time, to give a kind of schematic way of seeing the process of life growth by which a person emerges. When a person is born, he is born as a seed of possibility. There are many possibilities that are contained in him, just as the plant is contained as the possibility in the seed. When a person is born, he begins to grow with his possibilities, all that is individuality, but he grows in a particular environment, a particular society. Very often, he grows not so much in terms of his own particular seed, in terms of his own possibilities, as in terms of the conditionings and the pressures that the environment of the society places upon him. And as this happens, it develops certain aspects of personality and certain qualities of being which are part of his nature, even while the characteristics of the seed that are the potentials in him are trying to grow. But as this is taking place, it must be what is contained in the seed is there as possibility and as a movement toward the future. As the person begins to grow, as he has various experiences, he is also developing a past. That is to say, we begin with all possibility for the future. As we grow step by step, we still have possibilities all the time, but we have begun to accumulate a past, a history. We have started to have a life history. And when we think then, at any point in our life, if we were to, each of us, as I'm speaking, if we were to pause in our mind and to feel the movement of our life, and to feel inside of ourselves the possibilities in ourselves that we have felt and still feel, that somehow that intimation we have of being a seed of possibility, of having potentials, and feel at the same time the various steps in our life by which we have had a life history, by which we have moved from step to step, then we can have a realization that our life has been a movement of particular kinds of events, a history, that we have a life history that has preceded, and that no one else in all of the universe can have the same combination of events making their life history. That our life, while we begin by being human beings with a seed of possibility, as our life unfolds, it builds a history. It builds a history that is just particularly our life history. And we could say, nowhere else in time has that come together, and no one, never again, that it is this particular life. And beyond the fact of each of us in that way being unique, of being very special in this way, is the further fact that if we feel of ourselves or of another person, what is it that that person is doing? What is it that I am doing? As we go to feel, what is the person, what is that special, unique person that is within ourselves? We find or we feel that special person when we feel our own life history, that special mixture of the past moving out of a seed into a present, into moving toward a future.